I was treating the disease. I forgot that the person had a body, a mind, and a spirit, and that the disease can start in any of those dimensions, and so can the healing. I think it's the inner healing that matters. Why are you healed of cancer, for example? But there are countless scientific studies proving that faith changes the course of diseases.
Doesn't that contradict medicine? Scientific studies show that people who go through near-death experiences usually come back genuinely feeling like, or actually becoming, a better person.
Is reborn.
Renato, what explains this in your opinion? Prayer also has healing power.
Any doubt? Anything? Yes, I have doubts. There are brain areas that get activated during prayer. I was there in Medjugorje at night and I felt an immense urge to pray the rosary. Then I started discovering several studies that show that while praying the rosary, you can balance the autonomic nervous system, improve cerebral blood flow, and help regulate heart rate.
Miracles that medicine hasn't told us about. What are these miracles that medicine doesn't talk about, doctor?
The biggest miracle is a doctor's conversion.
Who? Chivu?
I was called. I heard a voice, a commanding and caring voice, my own. Many doctors profess a religion, Catholic, Christian, whatever it may be, but they are afraid, ashamed to say so.
In the Gospels, there are several moments that medicine could not explain. Jesus touching the leper, right? The person with leprosy, and they are healed. Jesus putting saliva on a blind person's eyes and that person beginning to see. Can you explain these events from your point of view, which is both religious and medical? My guest on today's show is a cardiologist who is also a broadcaster with more than 20 years on the radio. He sees the heart not only as a vital organ, but as the place where the soul develops. He sees medicine as a science that should heal not only the disease, but especially the patient. In his practice, which began more than 50 years ago, he applies modern concepts of integrative medicine, analyzing the body, mind, and spirit, believing that the patient doesn't just have something, but is suffering from something that has come upon them. But what makes a lot of people pay attention to my guest are the books and lectures he gives relating science and religion. That's right, for him, faith can often be more effective than medicine. Or rather, for him, faith is medicine. Medicine that solves very serious issues faced by modern humans, such as depression, anxiety, and even loneliness. In today's program, we're going to bring together things that humanity has separated over the past centuries, putting God and medicine, the scalpel and prayer, at the same table. And we'll also talk about what, according to my guest, are miracles that medicine has never understood. Dr. Roque Savioli, you may come in. Today's presentation is yours. Thank you very much. Depression? Where is God? This one is very famous.
I've had this book for over 20 years because it's always being reprinted.
And Father Leo is a beloved priest. He left a lot of longing, right? Yes.
I was his doctor.
He greatly influenced Father Fabio de Mello
At the beginning of his career,
early in Father Fabio de Mello's formation. I talked about him when I wrote the biography of Father Fabio de Mello. 20 years later, Miracles That Medicine.
he writes the preface of this
Book, this one here, yes. Miracles That Medicine Didn't Tell. What are these miracles medicine doesn't mention, doctor?
miracles. You see, it's a whole life experience, right? Of course, I'm not going to tell you because it's all in the book.
But you're going to tell me soon.
Look, the greatest miracle is the conversion of a doctor, right? That truly was the greatest miracle.
Which is your conversion.
My conversion that I told here. But I tell 12 cases, 12 or 13 cases of inexplicable situations that happened in this right at the beginning after my conversion.
That happened to you? To me, yes.
With my patients. And with my patients, yes. And the only case that I wasn't directly involved in, was of a child who had an inexplicable situation there. Because look, it's only the church that says that, right? I titled this book Miracles That Medicine Didn't Tell, but They're Inexplicable Situations. You know what tell me. So
For example, but you can tell it in detail, we have time.
we do. There are a few, right? Let me think.
That you really think is unexplainable. Yes.
For example, the guy who came to see me at Incor, well, not exactly to see me, but randomly,
I know that's the Heart Institute.
Heart here. He looked for so and so to see a cardiologist for an evaluation. And I was the one who saw him. I saw that he had a serious problem. And I ordered a catheterization, a coronary angiography. And when I saw the result, I said, no, you're going to be hospitalized because it's a serious situation. But up to that point, what did he have? It's coronary artery disease. He had his coronary arteries
All clogged, but not for Pontesferna.
I had to do that. I admitted him and told him he'd wait here for surgery.
Do you do the surgery as well? No.
No, I'm just a clinician. Well, what happened is that he started to develop a fever. So we kept postponing the surgery. This went on for a few weeks even. So every time we scheduled it, he would get a fever the next day. So we had to stop. Until one day he was fever-free. And then they told me, look, it's okay, he can have the surgery. But I remember very well, I was doing patient rounds before going to the ward, and suddenly my phone rings. It's the doctor, the surgeon, wanting to talk to me. I said, okay, come on.
What time is it?
A surgeon, 1 hour after surgery, wanting to talk to me. That's bad news, right?
He died. Did you think that?
I thought something happened. Then he told me, look, actually, we were entering the operating room with the patient when he had a rupture of the aorta artery. The aorta is the most important artery in the body. It turns out he was having a fever, and his aorta was getting bigger, and it ruptured right there. But there's a detail. This has a 95% chance of death. But he was just entering the operating room, and one of the coincidences, which I don't think is a coincidence, was that the surgeon who was going to operate on him was the top specialist in aortic aneurysms. So, well, the guy came out just fine. But look, during that time, what did I learn from this story? Because we learned
He had a 95% chance of
dying, and
he survived.
why? Because at that moment, his aorta ruptured. Then the surgeon asked, what happened? This is strange. Look at what occurred. The patient was admitted for one surgery, but it turned out to be something else.
And did that help?
Yes, it solved his case.
Why did the breakup help?
No, because if he had ruptured in the infirmary, he would be dying. If he had died later post-op, he still would have died. But what was interesting is that during the time he was hospitalized and postponed, I got to know a little about him, about what he was. He was from Teophilatone. And it was interesting because I would bring communion to him because I'm Catholic, you know that, right? I would bring communion because I'm a Eucharistic minister. I brought him communion. He read the word to me, and he was a church deacon. So during that time, things just started happening.
I already knew him before.
So I knew him. I met him that day. It was random. This guy left. This is Mr. Antonio. But now I remembered a case that could be called that.
But why was this first case miraculous?
It was because, look, a miracle is something unexplainable. Why did it rupture right when she entered the operating room? It could have ruptured before.
Couldn't it have been just a coincidence?
Does coincidence exist? Now it's about principle, right? I don't think coincidence exists. I think providence exists. Okay, I don't believe there is.
A divine intention.
Without a doubt, because he was someone who was religious. He had a mission, you know? Now look, sometimes illness happens so you can change your way of life, right? You must know about this. Someone who, for example, has a heart attack, then changes. And Silvio's case, this case was interesting. Silvio, who went and came back, it's also in this book here. Silvio was a guy in his 40s, around 40 years old, who also came to see me on his own to get a checkup. Surgery was recommended, same thing. Surgery was recommended. He had the operation, but he wasn't recovering after the surgery.
After the anesthesia, he didn't wake up.
He wasn't waking up. The surgery was over, everything. And we get involved because, look, I recommended the surgery for him. I didn't even know the surgeon.
So we feel responsible.
Exactly, responsible. Then the family, you get involved, you keep getting involved. And little by little, every time I went up to the ICU, everyone would say, Silvio hasn't woken up yet. Silvio hasn't woken up yet.
And then you felt the weight of the world.
Can you imagine 15 days like that? Then one day the staff called me. The ICU staff called me. Roque, come here. Silvio woke up. Yeah, honey. When I get there, Silvio comes up to me and says, come here. Silvio was a real joker. Okay, until now, my patient, until now. He comes up to me and says, Roque, you died. I said, what do you mean died? Man, I died and you died too. I said, what? I said, poor guy, the anesthesia must still be messing with his head, right? Then he told me that during the surgery, he saw himself leaving his body.
Near-death experience?
Near-death experience. And that he arrived at a place where, well, he described it in detail, that there were people who told him to go back, that he came back and everything. What did he say? I used to tell him, Silvio, you're crazy, you're nuts. That's not true. You're making things up. Can you believe he kept telling me this the whole year?
You had died.
That you had died, that this had happened, that you had come back. He completely changed his life.
He became a better person.
Totally, totally. He was a guy who worked a lot, didn't pay attention to his family. Suddenly, the guy even started showing up at home, helping his family. You have family love. But interestingly, during that time, there came a moment when I said, hey, Silvio, do this, record what you're telling me, and I'll keep it here with me. And when I went to write this book in 2001, I took it and made a transcription of what he wrote. And every time, so you can imagine back then, this got a lot of media attention, right? You got plenty of media attention without leaving.
But what was the miracle in this case?
The miracle was that he changed his life. And what I say, it could have been the anesthesia, it could have been something else, but he changed his life. Because look, it's not just about miracles. That doesn't mean physical healing doesn't matter. No, physical healing is just a small part. I think it's inner healing that matters. What's the point of being healed of something like cancer, for example? If you don't change your inner self, it doesn't help at all. That's it.
Does everyone need to change?
I think so. Everyone needs to.
We can always improve.
Always. I think that we, especially living today with the values of society, which are very segmented, which don't have much value or depth, right? So yes, you have to develop your spirituality. There's no other way.
Scientific studies show that people who go through near-death experiences usually come back feeling like or becoming a better person.
They are reborn.
They are reborn. What do you think explains that?
Well, look, near-death experience, we know there are studies going on all over the world where they put in the emergency room, they place a figure, something, to see if it's not just the person's illusion, you know? So the person comes back and says, look, we come back because, well, I can't explain to you why the person comes back, but they do come back.
You think they're reborn? God gives them a little nudge up there.
It's all good.
Go back, it's not your time yet.
Exactly. I think so. I think you have a mission to accomplish. Sometimes you haven't completed it entirely. Only God knows, right?
When did you start being a religious doctor? Was it around this time here?
A little after. That time when I was working on my doctoral thesis was in 92. I have always been Catholic.
Here, you weren't religious? No. You started medical school, not religious at all?
Not at all, not at all. No, we belong to that religion.
But you didn't believe?
You're Catholic too, right? I am. It's like that story about being Catholic. Yeah, you're part of the group like a social club, right? Because I lived in a city near São Paulo, Cotia, so we had to participate.
But weren't you Catholic?
I wasn't. I was Catholic, but I didn't know what it was.
Didn't you believe in God?
I believed in God, but I didn't have any connection with religion.
When did you convert?
I converted in 97.
Was there any remarkable event?
I had a personal mystical experience with God. What was it? I'll tell you a story. My wife at the time, she used to work in commerce. And one of her clients was a very Catholic person, Marisi Trussardi. You might have known her. Marisi Trussardi.
No.
She was. Marisi was her godmother. And sometimes she opened a big store. So she said, let's call the priest to bless your store. Well, she started with Marisi and she went to a prayer group. Also, Gisela was...
Was she religious?
Nothing. Catholic mother, Jewish father. She wasn't anything. Then she went to this event, this meeting, this prayer group. She had a personal encounter with God there. She'll share more later. When she came back to me, she told me, I was like, okay, and let's go to a mass like this, like that, and so on. And when I got to that mass, I had a calling. That thing I always criticized about Protestants who said Jesus called me, blah, 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 those kinds of talks. I always criticized that.
Did you think it was a lie?
I thought it was nonsense, that it was a delusion, that it was... And I had a personal calling. I heard a voice. I'm not crazy. I don't have schizophrenia. I didn't have any of that. I heard a voice calling me.
I truly heard it myself, not just thought I did.
That I went to my wife and said, listen, he's calling me. She said, who? Because I thought everyone had heard it. I heard a voice say, God is calling me, come. Come. A commanding and caring voice at the same time. At that time, I didn't have a steady religion, but I kept jumping from place to place. Spiritism, spiritist seance, because look, no matter how skeptical we are, no matter how much we are, let's say, Cartesian, on a personal level, there's always something missing. You have to make up for it. I needed that. I mean, my skeptical, materialistic side, but I needed the spiritual side. I kept looking for these places, but I just couldn't find myself. And that day I found myself.
And what exactly did the voice say? Yes.
God, come. That's all.
Did he say his name?
And he said, no, just come. Just come.
But what could this come mean?
It could be anything, but I went.
I went. And it was come to where?
Come with me, come to me.
But how did you know it was God?
Not because of the commanding voice, but at the moment of communion, when the priest raised the host, I looked, I heard that voice, and I said, no, it couldn't be anything else. You know, it was something affectionate, something loving, commanding and loving at the same time.
Because with Jesus, the Gospels tell us that the devil tried to deceive Jesus.
Yes, but that's okay, the devil, but it was different. Look, I can't explain it to you right now, but I never thought that it was someone else, that it was the enemy speaking, but it couldn't be.
Because it was called good, no.
It was a good thing that, you know, when you feel full, fulfilled. Proof is that I left there from that mass. Look, let me tell you something I forgot. At that time, I stepped away from medicine a bit. I handled the business side of INCOR, the Heart Institute. I set up the service.
Try, because when it hits here, it hits the microphone.
I handled the business side, the health insurance agreements. I set all of that up there because I had a lot of experience in that area. And I was away from medicine. But I always liked being a doctor, always. I worked in the emergency room. I did all of that. But at that time, because of Brazil's economic situation, everything was much easier, taking money and putting it in the bank than it was.
Are you talking about the 90s?
95, 94.
Was the real plan already in place by then?
Yes, it was.
So it was just before that?
Maybe before, right? Just before. But then I arrived at that mass, and right at the time of the gospel was about that man who hides the talents, you know, the parable of the 10 talents. Yeah, so there's a person who comes, the man comes and says, look, I'm going to give you these talents.
Talent here means money, right? Talent?
Talent, yeah. Come back here in a year and we'll see how things are. He gave it to 3 people. To the one who was given 5, he came back and returned 10. He said, all right, stay here with me. To the one who was given 2, he doubled it as well. The one who was given 1 got scared. He buried his talent and left it there. I was listening to this, you know, the gospel, and I thought, damn, I'm burying my talent. I'm burying what I've always done, Well, I was already more than 20 years out of school. And right after that, this calling came to me. I mean, I couldn't ignore it.
What was that voice like?
I can't explain it to you. I can't. Someone asked me that once too. I was in a group where I was explaining all of this. It was in an interview I did, even in Paris. I was explaining all of this. Suddenly the boss asked, was the voice male or female? I said, hey, come on. If you start to break this down, you lose the meaning of it, right? Because it was something impressive. I can't explain it to you. No. It's inexplicable. I know it was a calling you couldn't refuse. No.
And did that voice speak to you again?
Never again. Sometimes I look back and think, damn, did I make it up? Was I just crazy out of my mind? I wasn't. Please, because I changed my life, right? I completely changed my life. It was a calling, of course, because I always worked as a doctor. So what did I do? After that, I had gone a long time without practicing medicine. I went back to working as a doctor.
What were you doing at that time?
I handled the hospital's administrative side at Fundação Zerbini, though I'm not sure what it's like there. I earned much more than I did as a doctor. But then I went back to being a doctor. But I really went back to being a doctor like I was during my residency days. I returned to work in the ER seeing patients and handling general cases. You know, I really came back.
And that made a lot more sense.
For me, it completed me. That emptiness I had disappeared. Gradually, things progress. I posted this here and it continued from there.
You usually say, I tried the phrase here. You usually say a person without faith doesn't exist.
It's not difficult, right? Just look. Someone asked me the other day, how many people who are atheists do you see? Look, if I tell you it's just one or another person, it's obvious, right, that there's a whole bias in these stories because people know me from the media and everything. They know I'm Catholic, right? So they already come with that in mind. But look, it's really hard that when you're suffering, in the moment of suffering, it's hard not to have an explanation, right? You look for an explanation.
Everyone seeks relief when facing death. Suffering is similar.
Suffering is like that. You keep looking for God.
And when I read that, I remembered the philosopher Nietzsche.
Nietzsche?
Who was quite skeptical.
Totally.
And I brought a quote from Nietzsche here. Believing is easier than thinking. That's why there are more believers than thinkers.
No doubt. I completely agree with that.
Do you agree?
I agree. Because look, why would I just look? The whole miracle thing, okay? These unexplainable cases that happen every day that are always happening to us, I won't explain. I won't be able to explain. It's easier to believe. Why would I try to explain faith? Because it's a quantum thing that goes here and there. It's not easier. It's much better. Having faith and believing in that is much better for me.
Do you truly think one should try to explain it?
There are things you can't explain. There's no way to explain them. How are you going to explain, for example, that miracle at Lourdes, that last miracle, where a person who had cauda equina syndrome and couldn't walk suddenly walked? How are you going to explain what happened at Lourdes? The doctor who followed the patient throughout the process, you'll see, that's a Lourdes miracle. He saw that the person was dying. But then the person arrived in Lourdes, took a bath there. This was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and walked out.
Do you think that if you looked for it, there would be a scientific explanation and not faith?
Look, it's hard to explain that scientifically. There's no way.
So do you disagree with Nietzsche?
No, I agree with him. It's easier to believe. It's easier to believe and have faith than to keep thinking, man.
But he goes on. One more quote from Nietzsche. Conviction, faith is a more dangerous enemy of the truth than lies.
Thank you. What is truth? What is a lie to him? It depends. Isn't it?
Yeah, Nietzsche's understanding was that it's much simpler when you don't try to deal with the real problem and believe there's something divine to explain it.
It's easier for you to believe than to keep looking for explanations in everything. For example, those guys who are theologians, theology like they say, right? That theology is the best thing you have if you lose your faith. when you study theology.
So, but you went the other way. You discovered faith after science.
Yes, yes. Because then I saw that, for example, I was only treating the disease, not the person. I forgot that the person had a body, had a mind, had a spirit, and that the illness can start in any of those dimensions, and so can the healing. Much more today, for example, when you talk to the patient, 30, 40%, just by talking, you already solve it. Because the vast majority of illnesses today are psychosomatic. Stress, anxiety.
And in this sense, faith helps a lot. Does it play a role similar to that of psychology?
Yeah, you can't really compare the two, right? But there are countless scientific studies proving that faith changes the course of diseases. I've been in contact with many people about this. I studied this a lot. I wrote a few books about this. But these are just specific things, right? I mean, someone who goes to Mass a lot has greater longevity. Someone who goes to church a lot has better cholesterol control. Obviously, that's fine. How do you explain that? Is it because of lifestyle habits, right? Because from the moment you believe in God, from the moment you believe that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, it's a matter of logic. If you believe in that, you have to take care of yourself. Do you understand? For example, it's one of the ways I get my patient to adhere to the treatment or not.
It's about seeing the body as it is,
The body as the Spirit's temple, yes.
as Jesus said.
And it's real.
The temple wasn't in Jerusalem, it was within us. That's real, right?
In Corinthians, man, it's there in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians. So really the thing is, if you believe in that the human body is the masterpiece of creation, just imagine. The other day I was giving a lecture and I started like this. Look here. I got a gift from my wife 30 years ago. She was there in Paris. She opened it. She said, "Get me some water." I went to open the little door of the mini bar. There was a little gift box there, which was a watch. A watch, okay? I keep this watch. You saw me saying that. I keep this watch with care. It's the same thing. The human body is the same thing. It's a gift that God gave you. You have to take care of yourself because the Holy Spirit of God dwells in it. That's the main reason to take care of yourself.
Does even the most evil of human beings carry the Holy Spirit?
Yes, of course, everyone. It's creation itself, right? Only Satan, who ran away, doesn't carry it, right? Who is not spirit. It's not the Holy Spirit.
Do you understand that there is, in fact, the Spirit separate from the body?
Yes.
Does the Spirit leave the body at death?
Yes, I believe so. No. Man, someone asked me the other day, "Do you believe in life after death?" I said, "Of course, man. I'm a Christian." What Christian doesn't believe in the afterlife? It's different from talking about reincarnation. That's something else.
What do you expect after death?
Life after death is meeting Jesus, meeting God. That he will be waiting for you there so that you may have eternal life, so that you have inner peace. That inner peace, which I imagine is much greater than the peace we feel when we meet God here, alive, which is a peace. On the day I had this calling, I felt an inner peace that calms me. You know what I mean?
Peace, But sir, didn't you have any health problems that day?
Nothing. I had nothing. I was 40. I was lucid.
Perfectly lucid.
Totally lucid.
When a person has a near-death experience, does the spirit leave the body?
No, I can't answer that for you. Nobody knows that. No. Nobody knows that. Nobody died. Only if you know. There isn't. This story here. When you told me that you left your body, that you saw from above, okay, you might even believe it. But it could be because of the anesthesia he had. It could be. Did you understand?
So you believe in life after death, but not in reincarnation?
No, reincarnation it's not Christian, right?
The Christian principle is universal resurrection.
Yes. Of Christ, then the resurrection at the parousia.
At the end of time.
Parousias. All right? Then in the glorious body of God, it's different.
Do you believe that this resurrection will also happen in flesh and bone?
I believe it will happen. I have to believe, because if I'm a Christian, I have to listen to what's in the Word of God.
Doesn't that conflict with medicine?
Look, there are realities that we can't ignore because we can't explain them. Do you see the atom? You don't see it. There are things you know exist, but you don't see them.
There are methods to prove how the atom behaves. Yes.
I'm referring to the atom in a general sense. But there are things you can't explain. Intuition, can you explain it?
It's difficult.
No? So look, for us doctors, this is very common. The guy who's a real doctor, who really loves the profession, it's very common for the doctor to say, man, I went to do business, but at the last minute, you know what? I asked for another one. Boom, nailed it. What is that? Can you explain it? No.
Regarding the positive effects you mentioned about faith and religion on health, can you give examples from your practice? How did you observe these examples? Not those cases that are called miracles, la grosse, but the more ordinary cases.
It's what I told you. From the moment, careful.
With the watch because it turns, oh dear.
I talk a lot with my hands.
No, I just use my hand to keep the watch from hitting.
Yes. From the moment, like I told you, that a person admits they use the body that has the Holy Spirit, they already change their values. Medication adherence, okay, which is a terrible thing, especially here in Brazil, right?
Explain it to me, please.
Medication adherence, taking medicine.
There are people who don't want to take it.
Take hypertension, for example. The guy didn't take anything, didn't feel anything, and now he already has a stroke, right? Increase in cholesterol, those things, you can explain it to the person from a scientific point of view, not just saying, this can happen, your chance of having a stroke, blah, blah, blah. Reinforcing it with the spiritual side helps the person hold on better. Medication adherence, physical exercise, all these habits, those life essential 8 from the American Heart Association, which are 8 factors that we have to follow. So the person gradually adds this to their daily life, little by little, and starts to resolve things, starts to move forward.
In this case, is faith a factor of persuasion?
Yes, without a doubt, no doubt about it.
Not due to the divine connection specifically?
No, but because of the principles of lifestyle habits, life. And of course, look, for example, there are several studies, I'm telling you, there are several studies out there, but it's, for example, praying the rosary. Don't you find it kind of boring?
No.
No. Pa, 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 pa. I used to think so. I used to think that was something for...
I believe there's value in that repetition.
Yeah, I used to say that the church invented that because women like to talk a lot, so they keep talking, praying, you know? A distraction for women, right? Then I paid the price, right? They say I said it, right? I was in...
You were criticized.
Medjugorje, no. I went to Medjugorje. Medjugorje, if you know it, is a city.
The place of the apparition there in Bosnia.
She appeared in Bosnia. I was in Medjugorje. I always prayed the rosary. I had already been converted and everything. Then I felt, at night, I felt an immense urge to pray the rosary.
For the first time in my life, for the first time.
I prayed at the door. My wife followed and asked, hey, what happened? And from then on, I started studying because that's what science is, right? That's what an academic mind is. I started studying. I said, hang on, there has to be some logic to this. Then I started discovering several studies that show that during the rosary prayer, you can balance the autonomic nervous system between parasympathetic and sympathetic, where sympathetic excites and parasympathetic calms. When you breathe, you calm the sympathetic nervous system. So you balance it, improve cerebral blood flow, and improve heart rate. This study shows that.
Is it similar to the mantra's effect? Yes.
As if it were. In this study, there are both versions, right? Praying the rosary and saying the mantra. But yes, from then on, I started praying the rosary too. It's the first thing I do in the morning. Okay, first thing, I go to the hospital and I pray with the rosary in my hand. Yes, praying. I pray as I go. That brings comfort. Physically, mentally, because of the overall balance, and spiritually. Because I think it's important in that sense for you to live a spiritual life. Spirituality, I think it's basic for a man, for a human being. You can't, why do you live then? Come here. Why do you live? Why do you wake up in the morning? What for? If you don't have any goals, if you don't have a purpose in life, goodbye. There isn't any. Then come depression, illness, and more, right?
And does spirituality strengthen immunity?
Without a doubt, there are many, many pieces of evidence in that sense.
In this sense, any spirituality, for example, that of the Druze, Scientology, or the Amish.
When I talk about spirituality, I'm not talking about religiosity. Religion is something completely different. It's something personal. It's something that can't be criticized. You can't go into details. And here's the thing, it's a tool for you to practice your spirituality. That's what religion is for.
In your view, should no religion be criticized?
None. I think it's a personal matter. If God gave us free will, right? Including the freedom not to believe in Him, so why would I criticize a religion? Why would I want someone, like I always say, my office is not a religious pulpit, it's different.
Did you ever consider becoming a priest? No?
Never, not at all. Yeah,
You don't have that calling?
nothing, no way, no, it's something else. Nothing. My mission is to be a doctor, okay? And look, for example, during my appointments, I don't bring it up. I don't tell the guy, look, you have to be Catholic, nothing like that. We can't do that. That's not ethical. But at the end of the appointment, I use the protocols that exist from medical academies around the world, including from Mayo Clinic and Harvard. And that's where I ask questions about spirituality, not religion. If the guy comes to me and says, I don't want to talk about religion, I don't want to talk about anything, the conversation is over.
What are the questions?
First question, do you believe that faith and your beliefs can help you with your illness? Do you take part in anything? Do you go to mass or to a service? Do anything like that? Would you like to talk about these topics with me?
This is a protocol approved by the international medical community.
Yes, the American Society of Medicine from the Mayo Clinic.
For what purpose?
So you can address spirituality during the appointment. It's a formal way, you know? It makes it easier for you to ask. Now, when you ask if the person wants to open up about their spirituality, the doctor-patient relationship really changes.
How does it change?
It changes and opens up more. For example, a young woman came to me, I don't know, about 30 years old with palpitations, chest pain, and shortness of breath. Complaints, cardiac anxiety, okay? All right, I did a bunch of tests because first you have to rule out anything physical, right? You can't just assume everything is emotional. Well, everything was normal, and as I was talking to her little by little, opening up in that sense, I asked, would you like to tell me anything spiritual? She started telling me that she had a situation when she was younger, that she had to have an abortion, that her husband, her boyfriend, forced her, and so on, and that was something that was affecting her. That was what was causing all of that there. I only found out later after the appointment. And look how interesting, I even criticized myself a little because I asked her, you're Catholic, right? So here's what you do. You're going to leave here, and the first church you find, you stop, go in, and confess. Confession is something that even Jung himself thinks was a loss for our church, for the church, right? For the Protestant church. Because his father was a Protestant.
It's a loss not to have confession because it's good for you.
Because it's good.
Confession is good for the soul.
No doubt you connect with God directly. The priest there acts in the person of Christ. He is a person who is there. She confessed, and after some time she came back totally normal. Normal, or you didn't have a problem.
In the office.
She took the weight off her shoulders. Sometimes that's all it takes.
Does this have to do with exorcism? No.
Exorcism is another problem, also a bit more serious, right? Because everything gets labeled demonic, right? Everything gets labeled demonic. Suddenly, well, I'm part of the Catholic charismatic renewal, right? And everything in the renewal is sometimes an exaggeration of demonic things. So the guy ends up worshiping the demon more, praying to drive the demon away rather than praying to God, right? So yeah, there's a bit of exaggeration. There's an exorcist priest who's my friend, who was here until now, who's here in Brazil. Is he the Portuguese one?
Who is it?
It's Father Lara. The priest is Lara. He's Portuguese. He's from Lamego over there in Portugal. He's an exorcist. That's his role. He was a disciple of Gabriel Amor, who is a famous priest, exorcist, and all that. He always tells me that, well, everyone who has these spirits, those things you see on television, all those absurd things, that's all made up. It's all made up, or it's just the person pretending, you know?
But is the exorcist priest saying that?
Saying that real possession is extremely rare to happen.
And does he only take care of those rare cases?
Of those cases. Of course, that exists. I never took part in any of his exorcisms because I was also afraid, you know? Because they say it's violent when it happens. But most of the time it's not. Once I was at church and suddenly a woman started screaming and everything. They took the woman to the sacristy and called me to see what I could do. When I started to go, pressing here a little bit, the woman went, ow. It was nothing. Sometimes a person just has to, you know, that
It was a return to
consciousness. You find yourself responsible for what is happening in your life. And it's easier to think there's a demon that's possessed you.
In your patient's case, was she healed by confession? Yes, she was.
She fully recovered. I gave her medicine and she took all her medication.
So you don't give up on the medicine? No.
Not at all.
Is it a combination of faith and medication?
Exactly. It's there in the book of Ecclesiasticus 38. It says, the wise man does not despise medicine. If you take Ecclesiasticus, it must be written somewhere in my copy. He says that when you are sick, you have to say a prayer. You have to make an oblation, and then look for the doctor because you will always need him. So, man, the doctor is an instrument of God. All science comes from God, right?
And is your medicine also in accordance with the Old Testament? Yes.
I'm Catholic, I'm Christian, right? Because what's the difference between the testaments then? There isn't any.
The biggest difference I see is that in the Old Testament, there are some statements that science has difficulty understanding or accepting. Like, for example, the possibility that the first humans were Adam and Eve.
Yes, that's symbolic, right?
It's symbolic.
It's symbolic. You can't think it's an apple, that it's an apple. Actually, it's not. Actually, in the Garden of Eden, there were trees that man could eat from. The tree of eternity, the tree of knowledge. Only the knowledge of good and evil was forbidden to him. But then there was this transgression, and they came to know something that was not permitted by God.
Do you think knowledge should be accessible to everyone?
No, knowledge, yes, absolutely.
Not the knowledge of evil.
Yes, but look, not the knowledge of good and evil. It's the power over good and over evil. That's the thing. You know, you decide, look, stealing cell phones isn't part of it. It's not normal. Killing people isn't normal. That's a decision. I think that's it. Now, look, what does the Old Testament have? I'm not a guy who's an expert in the Bible. No, I have to study other things, right? But yeah, from what we know, Jesus only came to set people free in the new Gospels, to free people from those Jewish traditions that were holding people back a bit, right? Like, don't eat this, don't eat that.
Is the idea that there was a flood and that Noah saved the animals also symbolic?
I'm not worried either. Because why would I need to know if it's real or not? Do you understand? It's just that I don't go looking for it. I don't go looking for trouble. It's much easier for me to believe, because what difference does it make to you whether the parting of the Red Sea was real or not?
So you're agreeing with Nietzsche?
No, it's okay. It's easier. That's what I told you. It's much better for you to believe than to think. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have any kind of thoughts or anything like that. No. But why should I answer? What is the importance of you knowing whether the miracle of Cana, where the jars were filled with water that turned into wine, is real or not? Why? Do I have to believe yes or no? It's just that symbolically you see many things that happened in the gospel were things Jesus couldn't explain to people. Why fill that jar with water? Prayer. The prayer, you fill those jars with water through prayer. The prayer fills a situation where Our Lady goes and asks Jesus to turn it into wine. I mean, you who are like the jar with dirty water, who are there with prayer, he transforms you into a top quality wine. So the time for prayer, do you understand what I mean?
Prayer also has healing power.
No doubt about it. There is no doubt. Prayer is something that is extremely important.
But only when it is repeated like a rosary?
Of the rosary, no. Any kind of prayer. Spontaneous prayer.
But where does medicine come into play in prayer? Where does healing happen?
Where does healing happen? I can't really tell you, but look, listen. There are brain centers that respond during prayer. There are studies with functional magnetic resonance imaging. There are studies with PET scans. So
Explain that a little better. When a person is praying,
there is an area of the brain that works, centers that function, and it becomes more active. Here there isn't. There are brain areas that get activated during prayer, and these areas are connected to the limbic system, which is related to emotion, related to immunity, all of that. Now, it's clear, Rodrigo, that the studies have a small sample size, you know? No one is going to invest in this kind of thing. So there are studies with functional MRI, there are studies with PET scans, but they're done with just 5 or 6 patients, you know?
if there were more research on the power of religion in healing, yes.
We would discover more. I think there are a lot of unknown things that we will understand later on. Now, for the time being, it's better, it's easier to believe, right?
What is the effect of religion on depression? Depression.
It's perfect. Depression is a disease. Okay? And I when I wrote this book, even Father Leo, who wrote the preface, right? That was in 2003, yes. I said I wrote triangle. I wrote the depression triangle. Because at the time I studied depression a lot because of I started seeing patients and I saw another side, right? Like this lady, she was depressed because of her spiritual side, right? So what did I do? I wrote triangle, which is where you had the main symptoms of depression, which is thank you, which is anxiety, which is worrying about the future, melancholy, which is sadness and feelings of guilt. These are the three main symptoms from a depressive point of view.
Melancholy, anxiety, and guilt.
Guilt. The depressed person thinks they're to blame for everything, right? And sadness at the end of the day, loss of meaning in life, right? And anxiety, which is excessive worry. And at the time I was reading St. Paul's letter to the Philippians, I was studying, and I saw that, hey, come on, Paul was in prison. Hidden, right? Tied up, imprisoned, in chains, everything. And I would write, well, do not be anxious, give your worries to the Lord. Come on, he must have been worried, right? And Paul wasn't crazy or anything.
No.
No. The guy who was the pillar of the Christian Catholic religion, right? And then he wrote, rejoice in the Lord. And I made this triangle. That's what led to this book later.
What are the 3 elements?
Anxiety.
Was that in São Paulo? Did Paulo suffer from anxiety?
Well, he says no, he didn't suffer from anxiety. I'm telling you that depressed people feel anxiety, depression, and melancholy. It's guilt and melancholy. And I found in the word, right, in this letter from St. Paul, I found a connection to this. And it was interesting because from that I started to see that depression is a physical symptom. There's the physical illness, there's the mental, psychological illness, right? Which is the lack of inner emptiness and the spiritual part. So you have to take care of all 3 parts. You prescribe medicine for depression that helps with melancholy and anxiety. But what about guilt? How do you address that?
There's no medicine for guilt.
Not medicine, only God's grace can heal it. There's no way, come on, an anti-guilt pill doesn't exist.
So how do you do that, sir?
Prayer and Paulo, the example is from Paulo, right?
Do you pray with your patient in the office? No.
No, not that. I think that's a bit too much, right? Because you have to have a boundary. There's a very thin line between quackery and that. I don't turn my office into a religious pulpit, not at all.
If I did that, then I'd be crossing the line.
It's not right. It's not right. I pray by myself.
But have there ever been cases where a patient said, "Doctor, let's pray together"?
Yes.
And did you pray?
Yes, well, then I did. Yesterday, this past week, the pastor I was seeing said, "Doctor, let's go, okay? See you later." He said, "No, doctor, can we say a prayer?" Well, of course, right? All right. Now, because that's very dangerous, Because if you start to cross that line, I don't think it's right. So religion can't interfere in that sense. Because, of course, the way people come to me, because everyone who comes says, "Jesus loves me," right? With a band on their head, I already know. So it's much easier, much calmer. I guide them. I say, "Look, listen, you're going to take this medicine, but before you take this medicine, you should offer it to God. You kneel, pray, and say, 'Look, Lord, help me with this medicine,' blah, blah, blah."
Mm-hmm.
I think that in this sense, we feel like complete doctors, okay? But without crossing that line, which I think is very dangerous.
Because the other side is just charlatanism.
It's very dangerous. Soon the guy is praying, performing miracles, blessing people, you see? That's wrong. No.
You were talking about exorcism, and we mentioned some forms of healing through religion here. Yes, and I remember the case of Mary Magdalene, who had 7 demons and was healed by Jesus. What did Mary Magdalene have, right?
I don't know what to say. I don't know.
Because don't you think it was things like depression, anxiety? No.
She had 7 demons.
Do you think it's literal in this case?
Yes. Because look, it is.
Because when it comes to the Old Testament, you have a more symbolic interpretation. Adam and Eve, for example. In the case of Madalena, was it literal?
I think so, because it's just that at the time, epilepsy was often confused with demons, even now, right? Even now. Because one of the things about depression is that people think they're possessed, right? They say you have a bad spirit in you. You're possessed. That makes the person feel even worse, right? They're already being blamed. Imagine being told you have a bad spirit in you. You go, but it gets even worse. Now, I think that's what's written, isn't it? 7 demons. It's not in the Bible. So who am I to doubt that? No, no, no. Now, yes, now I know, because nowadays I see it. Okay, I have a lot of connection with the church. And sometimes some preacher came to talk to me like this. "Look, I'm going to testify to a miracle." I said, "That's cool. Look here. Exam, another exam." I said, "Don't do that nonsense. This exam is poorly done, man. Don't do that." Got it? There's a lot of that. Fake miracle. There are a lot of fake miracles. You see, sometimes it's not that the guy's lying. It's a lack of knowledge, right? So this exists. That's why a miracle is a very serious thing in the church. I'm part of, or I used to be part of, the group of doctors at Lourdes. Do you know what Lourdes is like? What it was like? Lourdes is like this. You have the medical bureau. Any doctor who arrives in Lourdes goes to the bureau. For example, there was a miracle here, okay? Go with the person to the medical bureau for a doctor's examination. There's a chief doctor in charge. All right, it was found to be an inexplicable case. That's when they ask for the people's doctor to send tests, but then you have to prove it. All right? You found that it's an inexplicable case. That's how it goes. They ask the person to come back every year because it's to see if the cure really happened. After that, this doctor goes to the international committee, which is held in Paris, okay, where the participants are professors from all religions, from all universities. They are the ones who will say, "Look, this is truly an inexplicable case."
Are you one of those doctors? No. Then in what sense were you a doctor at Lourdes?
In Lourdes, yes, I was part of it because Patrick Taye, who was the doctor at the time, who was in charge, was my friend.
And did you analyze the cases to see if they were true or not?
Once in a while. Once or twice.
So you're the first devil's advocate I've ever met. Why?
Why devil's advocate?
Because you used to argue both sides between the miracle and the truth.
That's right. But all the doctors there, that was always the first thing. Go there and say, "That's not true." You start from the assumption that it's not true. Little by little, you start to see. Otherwise, everything is a miracle, right? Everything is, you can imagine, you turn on the TV and it's lumps that disappear, lumps that appear, isn't it? It all becomes kind of trivial, right? It's kind of trivial, all that.
People do have a tendency to exaggerate.
To always look for some extra connection, to explain a mistake, a failure sometimes, right, of the person, right? I mean, I'm not guilty. It's the spirit that came into me that made me do this foolish thing.
So you are religious, but still skeptical.
No, of course I am. Sure, I am. I have a Cartesian background, and you always have to look at things from the point where you live. I'm a doctor, man. I have to look at things in a personal, real, material, scientific way. Okay, if I don't find a reason in this, I go to the spiritual side. On the spiritual side, I don't look for reasons anymore. I just believe, and that's it.
You went to Medjugorje, where Mary is said to have appeared, actually several ongoing apparitions. It hasn't been recognized by the Vatican yet. No.
Yes, I went to Medjugorje, I did.
Because the apparition of Our Lady remains unrecognized.
Actually, like Fatima, the
devotion is accepted.
Yes, because Pope Francisco, who didn't really accept it much, but John Paul II, he always believed. And Fatima, yes. Lourdes, yes.
Do you understand what happened and what happens in Medjugorje?
I know that Medjugorje has a transformation, you see, a miracle. The apparition, sometimes, you don't need to have an apparition to change. If Our Lady appears to you here, God forbid I don't want to appear. No, because otherwise I'll have to be absolutely right my whole life, right? So look, the situation in Medjugorje, when there are a lot of people with the same faith, it seems like things start coming together. That's why miracles happen in the big ones. Times when everyone gathers to pray and worship together.
Like in Fatima.
Like in Lourdes, for example. Lourdes is spectacular. For me, Lourdes wins.
The apparition at Lourdes was to Bernadette Soubirous.
Yes, there's miraculous water there.
In Fatima, it starts with the little shepherds, then a crowd goes to witness it.
You see Alex Carrel, who was that doctor who won the Nobel Prize in 1900 and something, he was the one who accompanied a patient because he didn't believe in Lourdes, because people said there were miracles in Lourdes. He didn't believe it, just like us, doctors. Then his colleague who used to accompany the patients going to Lourdes, there was a train that took the patients, couldn't go, so he said, no, I'll go because I want to see this up close.
He got there.
He's a doctor, a professor at the Lyon Medical School, French.
He
got there and he saw a transformation, a woman who was dying. He said, write it down. He believed that the person wouldn't make it, wouldn't be able to get there. She entered the bath at Lourdes and walked out. He wrote that. He published it. Well, the people from Lyon, from the medical school, kicked him out.
He was fired.
He was fired from the surgery department at the university. And he went to Canada. There in Canada, he started doing research. He met an American millionaire. They sponsored him, and he won the Nobel Prize. Okay?
Regarding what he saw, right?
No, there are other things.
Have you ever witnessed anything like this before?
A miracle like this? No. I see it. I understand it in a different way, Because a miracle is something absolutely contrary to what God says, isn't it? Which is divine interference in nature.
And nature is God.
No, nature belongs to us here. Divine interference in nature. Hey, what about free will? Where is it? If he interferes, there's no free will.
So it's not divine interference.
Yes, it's a divine interference, but it's something infrequent. God's plan is always to bring healing through something. Well, it's you or your doctor who heals, who helps. It's medicine that heals you. It's a friend. It's a person, but not a divine act. It proves that miracles are rare. Lourdes has only 67 miracles. How many years has Lourdes existed? This thing about saying miracle, miracle, miracle. Now, I think that this divine interference it's the opposite. The miracle is contrary to what God says, which is always through something.
Was your calling miraculous?
Yes, it was. For me, it changed my life. Everything that changes our lives from a spiritual point of view, everything for me is miraculous, isn't it? The greatest doctor, the greatest was here. Look, the greatest miracle was,
The transformation of the doctor himself.
it's written here, the greatest miracle was this one. Look, from the chapters there, right at the beginning. The greatest miracle was my conversion.
The image of Our Lady of Aparecida is the greatest symbol of Brazilian faith. Yes.
No doubt.
How do miracles happen in Aparecida?
Just like anywhere else in the world, right? I mean, we don't really know the power of prayer, the power. Well, we do know from a few studies that there are, like I told you, areas of the brain that respond to prayer. Now, for that to lead to healing, that's something else, right? You can't really understand it, you just can't. Now, Our Lady, the devotion to Mary in Aparecida is amazing, right? Because at the time, exactly at the time when black people were suffering with slavery and all that, it was really something symbolic, right? It was something they needed, right? It really was. Those miracles of chains breaking off and disappearing.
Chains, all slaves, right? It's said that even Princess Isabel got pregnant after a request that the Count made there. Or after she went there too.
Anything can happen, anything. I believe. Now, don't ask me why or how it is. No.
No, you are part of the charismatic renewal. You publish books through Canção Nova. You have a show on Canção Nova.
I have a radio show. You were talking about TV. The one who has a TV show is my wife, okay? I show up from time to time. She calls me to participate, but I have a radio show.
Is this the radio show? Or is this an online post?
At the doctor's office. No, that's at the doctor's office. The radio show, I do it. I record it at home for the upcoming Saturday.
I was gonna ask, how did the skeptical doctor who received a calling from God become an influencer?
That's another thing.
Digital?
Look, my wife and I had already been in the media for a long time because of our radio and TV work, the My Saúde program on Canção Nova. And that's Gisela. And then I heard a lot of things on the internet, a lot of wrong things. I saw colleagues saying, look, you can eat it, cholesterol doesn't cause heart attacks. You see so many things like that. I would go to her and say, see, so-and-so is saying this. That's absurd. There came a time when she couldn't take it anymore. She said, damn, why don't you go on the internet? So do it yourself. Instead of telling me, go say it online.
How long ago was that?
2 years.
Only
A year, 2 years. But God helped me a lot, you know? Because many people started showing up. It was like this, but
the radio show was already on and everything was fine.
But the radio show. AM radio in Sao Paulo, man, nobody listened to it.
The show got big because of the internet, right?
Yeah, now there's FM. There wasn't before. It was AM Radio America. Who listened to that? Nobody listens to radio or TV. AM, right?
But that's it. I went on the internet.
When did it go viral? It happened in October of 2023. 2 years.
2 years. It's been 2 years now. And it started. But which video went viral?
Because I can't tell you now that it's 2 million, 2,000, 2 million. No.
On YouTube or on Instagram?
No, it was because of praying the rosary. Me too. Me too. The rosary prayer. Now look, I always look for topics that I know people are missing. For those people who live far away, who don't have access to information. So these are topics, medical topics, you know? Every now and then I get into another topic, but I avoid it, you know? I've always talked about praying the rosary because at the time I was doing the St. Michael's Lent with Friar Gilson. I don't know if you know him. So waking up at 4 a.m, praying the rosary. So I said, well, let me tell others too, what's the purpose of the rosary, that it's not just spiritual, that it also has a physical side and so on. Because maybe some colleagues, some doctor, some health professional who also has this information, right?
What explanation did you give about the rosary on the internet? What did you explain?
Yes, because you improve cerebral blood flow. Because when you breathe, you don't speak. When you speak, you don't breathe, right? So what happens? This study went like this. The priest would recite the first part of the Hail Mary and the people would respond. So, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women. Blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. You start creating a breathing mechanism that gives exactly 6 per second. Actually, you have synchronization, a system. You activate the vagal nervous system. So it improves blood pressure, improves heart rate, improves cerebral flow, and relaxes the person. So this has a physical positive side, let's say, of the third, and it has a spiritual side that is indisputable.
So Fray Gilson's rosary has a healing effect.
Without a doubt. Any kind of rosary, right? Any Christian prayer, the rosary, that's it.
So, but Fray Gilson is speaking to 4 million people.
Fray Gilson is amazing, right?
He's healing a lot of people.
People, not him. The faith of the people here doesn't heal anyone. It's not us who heals, it's God who heals. Healing is always divine. Even for that guy who doesn't believe in God, it's always divine.
I was talking about Canção Nova and the charismatic renewal. There's a movement, right? There's a certain ritual that the charismatics do which really catches my attention, which is speaking in tongues. Do you do this ritual?
I have difficulty.
Why?
I have difficulty too. I don't think it's really a charism.
Isn't it yours?
I can't do it. I try, but I can't do it, And you don't have to pray in tongues, okay? You're not required to speak in tongues or have the gift of prophecy. The Bible's gifts of the Holy Spirit are not mandatory. Nothing. Some people have the gift of prophecy. Now, I get very apprehensive, With this prophecy thing, how do you know when it's the man, when it's God speaking, or when it's the enemy speaking, right?
Do you think sometimes there are exaggerations?
I think so. That's why I like to keep my feet on the ground. There are also many priests who think the same way, They have a more emotional side. You don't need emotion. You don't need to show emotion when you're praying. You don't have to.
You're grounded, yet you have wings.
I don't know if I have wings or not, but I don't think so. I do have my feet on the ground.
Do you think you became a better doctor after all this?
Without a doubt. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'm sure of that because from the moment I met God, I was able to be a real, fully rounded doctor.
And what would you say to 99% of doctors who are skeptical and probably atheists?
I don't know if all of that is real. Okay? Because when I wrote this, my first book, imagine me writing a book at the Heart Institute at the School of Medicine of the University of São Paulo. Imagine me showing up like this. What didn't they say about me, right?
But you aren't wearing a cross here. You have 2 stethoscopes.
I was holding the cross earlier. It wasn't easy, no. But look, you said something that I don't know if it's real. 99%.
No, it's not real. It's just my own estimate here.
But look, many doctors, they profess their Catholic or Christian religion, whatever it is, but they're afraid, they're ashamed to say it. They're afraid to expose themselves to the public. I had a colleague who would take a religious book and cover it with that dark paper, so it wouldn't show at the hospital.
Is there prejudice from doctors against religious doctors?
There's no doubt about it. They say, this guy is talking nonsense, this guy is saying this, But actually, look, how did I manage to overcome all of this, right? They used to say in the beginning, this guy has, and comparing my life before and after, right? Suddenly I show up there, God, I don't know what it is, right? People saw me differently, my life is different.
But I think people must have been more shocked when they saw you like this,
Ha ha ha, that's how it is over there in Dubai with my son.
And were you dressed as a Bedouin that day?
As a Bedouin, yes.
Was it only a sightseeing tour?
It was just a tour. That's my son. We're exploring the deserts.
Your son is
the
man in your marketing, yes.
Yes.
Is he the one who takes care of the social media?
He takes care of it.
And he was also responsible, no?
No, that's it. Look, it was a deal, in a year, 2 years, but getting that kind of visibility is hard, right?
But did the son help? No.
No? Now that he joined, I thought, come on, come here and help me because I really couldn't handle it. People would call me, send emails, and I wouldn't reply. I didn't have time, right? Sometimes when people made me offers for this or that, I would say I don't have time.
The invitations for lectures increased.
For everything, invitations for lectures, for this, for that. And I avoid it, you know? At the beginning of my conversion, I went to every lecture I was invited to. All of them. When I sang, I shared my personal experiences and more. Now, I don't have time anymore. And I called Roquinho to join me so he could organize this administrative part for me. Sometimes there are some labs that want me to do this, or that, right? But yeah, he just started. He's new. But yeah, I was telling you the following. Imagine me showing up at the hospital with this whole story. The guys say, "You're crazy, you've lost your mind." This is a lie. There's some scheme behind this. This is mild.
Did you bring it from your move?
Yeah, no one believed it.
So you were accused of charlatanism.
I wouldn't say charlatanism, but they said I was a wolf in sheep's clothing. But it's just that they were right. They were right. Because what I was before, I really was a wolf.
But what did you do as a wolf, sir?
Very little else. Everything and then some business activities and personal life.
Was everything wrong?
Everything was complicated. Everything. I changed. Suddenly I arrive at the hospital like this. Initially, I worked in administration, but then I decided I wanted to move to the medical side and see patients. I wanted to do more, but something felt off. And I went for a while. But what happened is that God anesthetized me. I didn't notice. I didn't hear what people were saying, okay? And gradually, this book, see how much it was? Look at the price.
What do you mean God anesthetized you regarding those criticisms?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything, just pretended to listen. And millions of views, millions of books. It's a lot, man. That was a miracle. It was a miracle.
But was that after your conversion? And why does it say 20 years later?
20 years later. Because I released this book here in 2001 first. And I re-released it now through Canção Nova.
And when was the calling?
1990 and 1997.
The recent successes on social media.
That's been in the past year or two.
You say that many doctors are religious. Many, and they don't say it.
Yes.
You were criticized by some of them. Yes. What would you like to say to these doctors? What do they need to learn that you have already learned?
You met Father Leo, right? Yes, Father Leo.
No, I haven't met him, but I know his story.
I wasn't very close to him. And the first time I went on Father Leo's show, I went to give him this book. He came up to me and said, "Now I'm going to introduce you to a doctor who's not ashamed." I looked and said, "Is he calling you shameless?" Not ashamed to show God's things. I mean, most doctors are afraid. They're even a bit embarrassed to show that side during consultations. But thank God, God is using me. So more people stop feeling embarrassed. So many people, colleagues, who send me emails and everything saying that they started doing things like this. They showed themselves. I think the doctor-patient relationship becomes better when the doctor also opens up. Right? You feel a greater openness. Because why would that girl tell me that she had an abortion? Nobody knew. She didn't tell anyone. And right at that moment, she decided to tell me. Why me at that moment?
Why?
Because God used me to listen to her and to guide her.
Please, do you think you were chosen by God?
Without a doubt. No, all of us are. Honor the doctor because he is an instrument of God. All of us. That's in Ecclesiasticus.
Some people just don't want to know about that.
If you are, you take responsibility. God knocks. Jesus knocks on the door once, twice, right? If you don't open, what does he say in the gospel? You take your sandal, right? Clean it off and leave that city. You even take the dust of the city with you.
Leave it. That was a reply to the criticism.
Yes, but the criticism has passed. Afterwards, as time went by, I started to organize. I started to organize mass there at the hospital. I would bring in a famous priest. Then Joe, at one point, they called me over and said, "Hey, come here, stop with these things. The place is packed with people in front, packed on the other side. They're complaining. The council is complaining."
It was just like at St. Peter's house there. It was so crowded they had to bring the paraplegic in through the roof.
It's from above, right?
There was no way to get through.
People like this. People need it. You can see the reaction. It's real. You know, Cancel Nova, at Friar Gilson's event, there were over 100,000 people, damn. Inside the arena. I mean, and every week it's always packed, always packed. I mean, people need it. People are in this. They're longing for God. Even more so, I think it's in this current situation that we see it. If you read the newspaper, you see that it's an economic and political situation all over the world. You see that everything is a big mess. You need to hold on to something spiritual or ethereal, or else how can you make sense of all this?
There's something else that we all need, and I think you'll agree with me. Every now and then, have something to eat.
Yes, eating is good for you.
Shall we move on to the second act?
Let's go. This studio is nice.
Right, well then,
It was a miracle.
Jesus that I love. Which one? The transformation of wine, of course, because I love drinking wine.
First miracle, this one is from the little hand. No, no, no.
Do you want something to drink? Grape juice?
A water, open it, a water.
A little coffee too then. Coffee is better. This is for sugar. I don't know anything.
So it's much easier.
But this one
Was the
first.
miracle,
You see that he authorized all of us.
right? Water too, it's starting to rain.
You have time today, right? When you wrote the story of
Fabio de,
Mello, yes.
because I can,
Also have the biography here.
of Father Fabio. Fabio, I know. It's because he's from there, from Canção.
Not Nova, not from Canção Nova.
He was from Father Leo's order. Father
Leo,
was his boss. He started his career because of Father Amaro, right? In many ways.
I took care of Fabio's mother,
I took care of her, Mrs. Anna.
but your command.
Fabio, this is cake. No, thank you. Aren't you going to leave me alone?
So let's go.
Go ahead, please. Look.
There's cheese too if you don't want it. All right, I want you here, or else, look.
See if I like it. Let's go.
Thank you. I noticed that your wife was. And correct me if I'm wrong, was she Pope Benedict XVI's nutritionist? She was. How did that happen?
When he came here,
But did she take care of his diet while he was staying here?
she set up the kitchen there in Aparecida, in that seminary there, which today has become a guest house.
The Balm Jesus guest house.
Jesus then. Downstairs there was a kitchen that was completely destroyed, and then Dom Damasceno, who was the cardinal at the time. He invited us, Gisela, saying, "Come here, don't you want to manage the Pope's kitchen?" But we didn't know how it was. When he arrived, he said, "This is where the kitchen will be." There was nothing. There was nothing. Then we ran around asking one person after another.
And what did you do?
We asked people for help.
For equipment in the kitchen? Yes.
Everything. There was nothing. Nothing. Then there was a report, not just from the kitchen, but also from the hotel side, sheets, pillowcases, and so on.
They asked, were you the ones who brought everything for Pope Benedict XVI and that later stayed for Pope Francis? Huh?
That kitchen down there.
I see. The whole thing. I always stay there.
We did it ourselves. My wife managed it, asking one person then another because she had a lot of connections. She got it, which was around $300,000 or $400,000 at the time. She managed to get everything.
Look at that.
And the funniest thing is, when the Pope came, she didn't go.
Do you know why? No?
Because that's when the confusion started. Because, look, she needed the Pope's food to be approved by the nutritionist, but that's when it started. Because so-and-so wants to bring cake and someone else wants to bring something else. The wine had to be the wine from Mrs. Amaceno's acquaintance. Then she said, "Look, if the Pope has any problem here, I'm the one responsible. So I'm going to step out."
Did she leave? She did?
He set everything up, tidied, and left. We didn't see the Pope. She didn't either.
We didn't go, but why was she upset? Because she was upset.
No, that's why first of all, since she wasn't going to be responsible for, just imagine, if some food gets to the Pope and the Pope dies there, damn, she would be responsible. You can't.
She left?
So there wouldn't be, she left, of course. Otherwise, because then it would be like, no, because Mrs. Amaceno says, no, but that little old lady, she's so sweet. She wants to bring candy for Papa. She can't. How will she get into the kitchen?
But she can. They let her.
They allowed her. She had to take a stool test like everyone working in the kitchen. But how? Stool test? Because, imagine if someone has a problem, they'll transmit it. And the whole group of bishops, right, from the Selam, right, later on, right? The Pope attended the bishops' meeting.
Including where Pope Francis was then, right? I mean, he wasn't the Pope yet.
And she has all the documentation from the Vatican, everything they sent her written. No, it wasn't. He said, when it's cake time, let me eat.
And her, your wife, did she only become a nutritionist after converting too?
Yes, she did too.
Why?
Look, she used to work with a women's imported goods store. Okay? Before Dasdu, she used to compete with Dasdu at the time. And she also sold to high society, Escada products, everything. She has a store. But at the time, right after Collar opened up, the importation, but then she came to me one day. She had a store of 2,300 square meters in the time, 3 floors. One day she comes to me and says, I can't work with luxury anymore. Working here selling dresses for $5,000, $10,000 made her feel bad. She felt bad.
And you too?
Not me, because it was
your job.
Yeah, no, I even helped her with the commercial part, the administrative part. But then she came and said, well, let's close the store, right? I said, for God's sake, how is this going to work? 45 employees.
Imagine it was a good income.
Man, it was making $1 million a month in revenue. 95 around that. $1 million a month in revenue. Man, that was a lot. What would that be today? 5-6 million a month.
That's a lot of money.
Then suddenly it stopped. I said, you can imagine the financial situation we were in.
But your work also brought in money.
Yes, but only a little since I worked in administration.
Hers then much more, a lot.
Much, much more. Well, she asked me to take care of the administrative part because I saw so much money going around there and it was already very well established.
That's why you began leaving medicine too.
That's why I left too. That's why too. There came a moment when I said, man, now we're done, right? Because just imagine all of a sudden it shuts down. With 45 employees, we had to pay compensation and everything. We were ruined. It really broke her.
You really shut the doors, closed overnight, all because of her guilt.
Exactly. And for other reasons as well, from the point of view of inspectors and everything, you have to make things easier. In Brazil, it's difficult. Brazilian problems. Yeah, problems. And it also didn't match with what we knew about being Christian, right? About being a Christian, right? You can't do that. You can't give bribes. It just doesn't make sense. But that was a complicated economic situation for us. But God is so good. Sometimes you sink and then you rise again, right? And then the moment came when she said, well, what am I going to do? Because she stopped working, right?
That still had nothing to do with religion.
Back then we were already religious. Proof of that is that Nossa appeared on the cover of Veja magazine once, showing that she held mass in the store.
Was it in the main Veja magazine or in Veja São Paulo?
In the main one. It had like a monstrance on the cover with Father Marcelo and everything, and she was there too. What was the title? Renewed Catholics, something like that, because she has that. And it was interesting because she used to organize mass there, high society. Everyone in high society attended the mass. It closed. Things started to get complicated. Then one day she said, I'm not doing anything. I'm feeling stuck. Because she always worked. She was a journalist. She is a journalist. She worked at Jovem Pan. She used to work as an announcer for Jovem Pan FM. That was many years ago. She said, what do you think about me studying nutrition? I said, why not? Then she started college and she began.
But was that in the middle of a financial decline?
Yes. Because of that, since she had nothing to do, she started studying.
Just to be sure.
Yes.
The religious movements inside the store were the beginning of the downfall. They were.
Exactly. Why? No, it's not that they were responsible. No, it's because it started that way. See? It was incompatible for you to be religious, to be Christian, to have faith, and to do something contrary to that. What was that?
I consider it excessive.
Yeah, no, that's not it. How are you going to sell an outfit that costs 5,000, really encourage people to spend like that and all that? It has nothing to do with religion.
She felt she was harming her clients.
Besides that, there's another aspect when it comes to releasing merchandise and all that, you know? It's full of corruption just like everywhere else. Yeah, either you become corrupt or you don't. And it's not compatible with religion. It's not compatible with the moment we were in. A moment of total transformation. Then she arrived and I said, all right, let's go. Let's do this. She started college and stood out in a spectacular way. In 2005, she graduated. In 2006, 2007, I think the Pope came. And right after that, then she started going online and everything.
And then right after that, did your calling come?
Yes, no, it came before. When she started holding masses at the church here, because we were already participating in the religion there, and that happened in 97, my calling. And in 99, around 90. In 99, she closed. She closed both stores she had in Morumbi, at the mall, and here in E-Time.
And how did life get back to normal after that?
God is so good. Little by little, you start coming back. And today, just so you know, Rodrigo, we're doing better financially than we were back then. Much better.
With her work and yours.
Exactly. Plus the books and everything else that comes with it. But it was really interesting.
Big transformation.
Totally. So the other day we were talking, right? We were talking to a patient and she was saying, look, we left everything we had. We used to travel to Europe in first class all the time, every time, first class, every time. We were always traveling. She didn't have any problems. But then the person said, no, you didn't lose anything. That wasn't yours. That was life leading you to this. Now, yes, now you have the things of God. And really, we're better today than we were 30 years ago.
Spiritually and financially.
Totally. I think the peace you have, the spiritual point of view, the certainty that you are doing the right thing for yourself, that you are feeling good about it, it ends up bearing fruit automatically.
Do you share that with your patients? Yes. How? How do you do that without proselytizing?
How do I do that? I don't know. You should go and see. Is it natural? Yes. Does it happen in conversations? Yes. Suddenly it starts. I don't know when. Once I asked Father Jonas Habib, who was the founder of the community.
I met Father Jonas. I did.
I said to Father Jonas, Father, how do I say that sometimes I'm about to do something for a patient and I feel that the Holy Spirit is telling me to do something else? I do it. How do I do that? How do I say that inside the hospital? How do I tell the students? How does it work? He said, no, son, say it's intuition.
Don't call it God. Call it intuition.
Intuition, that's it. And so many colleagues who keep saying intuition, I did such a thing by intuition, not intuition at all. Guys, it's God speaking. God truly speaks to us, you know, he does.
Yeah, I'm really inspired by our conversation here. And I wanted to know if in your faith, in your routine, is there any saint who inspires your story? Someone who was a reference or is?
No, look, we have devotions, childhood devotions, right? We have Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus, for example. She's a saint people are devoted to. Father Pio, Saint Father Pio. Mm-hmm. Father Leo himself, right? Servant of God now, right? Is he already? He is a servant of God. No, not yet. And he's already on the way to being beatified. But that's it. Theoretical from that point of view. Like that saint of devotion. No, a lady who looks similar. Those childhood things we keep, right? And Padre Pio, who is more recent now, right?
Padre Pio is an inspiration.
Yes. Padre Pio is.
He had his confrontations with God there.
Wow, he really did, didn't he? Wow, I'm out, you know? I'm out of those things.
Speaking of that, a helicopter is passing by. And St. Carlo Acutis,
Yeah, I don't know him. I just learned about him, right? But it's an interesting thing, right? I mean, the guy, young, right? He used the internet for the positive side of the internet, for spreading the word, for evangelizing. Because the internet, I mean, it has both things, right? There's the positive side and there's this evil side that exists.
do you think that in general the internet has been negative?
Yes. How do you see that? Because of wrong information, right? Fake news there, especially regarding health. Yeah, that's why I didn't get involved in that story.
Why? The vaccine issue, for example, man.
Do you see how absurd this vaccine thing is? The way people refuse to get vaccinated because they think they're going to turn into I don't know what, that it's going to cause this or that. Yeah, it's just absurd. The inexperienced guy who isn't a doctor can't speak. And then this story keeps going. Back during the COVID days, the guy would cross the street, get vaccinated, cross the street, the car would hit him, run him over, and it was the vaccine's fault. Everything. So it's not like that. It's not. And it proves that later, with vaccination, you saw that mortality went down, right?
So why did you get involved? What do you have to do with this?
Yeah, because you were the one who mentioned the vaccine to me. Because of the internet. Yeah, the internet has fake news like that story about cholesterol not causing heart attacks. Seriously, what's up with that?
Got in to be
Someone who calms people's fears. Exactly. I talked about it so much to my wife. She said, stop bothering me. You go talk about it. And suddenly, poof, she jokes with me today that I surpassed the number of people there, that she had been there for a long time, right? I said, well, God chose.
She is also very active on the internet.
A lot. She has a lot on YouTube. She has over 1 million, and on Instagram too, more than 1.5 million. That's right. Wow, our life is just recording day after day, week after week. Do you think that...
If St. Paulo, the apostle, lived today, would he also have Instagram?
Without a doubt, no question about it, Jesus had Instagram.
Would Jesus have it too?
Of course he would. Come on, it's a means of communication. Canção Nova is our communication system. It has radio, TV, internet. So, yeah, Jesus has it.
People will get upset and say, if Jesus had it, he must have had the internet.
Whatever he has.
There's always someone who'll complain.
Yes, but can't you see life is just like that?
But St. Paul wasn't like that. He was a communicator.
Some went there with him. St. Paul, St. Peter. Do you think the apostles wouldn't have a TV channel? Of course they would.
At least he would have a show, just like Father Leo had.
On Mondays, he had a show called The Lord's Tent.
Father Fabio de Mello has...
Everyone has one. Fabio had it. Now he has it again. Yeah, spiritual guidance. Spiritual guidance, that's it.
Once over there at Canção Nova.
With him on his show. Yeah, he used to record in the studio, in Father Leo's studio, there in Cachoeira Paulista. Exactly. Later, he would call from Taubaté.
We're talking about preaching here. We're talking about evangelization. I wanted to take our conversation a bit deeper, as we already have a few times, and I wanted to keep going so we can talk about the gospel. Yes. But I'm going to make this invitation so we can continue in the third act.
Let's go, shall we?
Here, the proposal is a reflection. This here is your network. Hey, Ponyo, get comfortable. Take off your shoes, rest your head, and do it from the other side. It's easier. Okay, go ahead. The idea is for us to relax a bit. I'll see if anyone follows you. While we were thinking there, talking earlier, you brought many stories that a lot of people will say were miracles. You yourself, in the very title of the book, used the word miracle, of events that medicine can't explain. In the Gospels, there are several moments that medicine wouldn't be able to explain. For example, Jesus touching the leper, the person with Hansen's disease, and they are healed. Jesus putting saliva on the eyes of a blind person and they start to see. The woman with the hemorrhage touches Jesus' cloak and is healed. Can you explain these events from your point of view, which is both religious and medical?
Well, look, this passage you mentioned about the woman with hemorrhage was a passage that really touched me, Because you see, look, that's it. The woman does everything she can to touch Jesus' cloak. I mean, it's the human side of faith. You need touch.
Yes.
But it's not just about touching the cloak. You see that Jesus speaks afterward because everyone touched Jesus. The apostles themselves said to him, they said, hey, come on, everyone touches you. What are you talking about? Someone touched me. That's what he says. Because a great power came out of me. So it's this power that comes out of Jesus that heals.
Do you think that the touch was what healed that woman? No.
It was the touch, but it was the power that healed, the power that came out of Jesus. Otherwise, it would be kind of like a placebo, right? Just the fact that I touch here, you know, my brain will do something and it will heal me.
That's not it.
No, a very strong force came out, as Jesus said, right? Someone touched me. But how, Master? Because a very strong force came out of me. So that's the power of the Spirit healing. It's not just you. Because look, every time you see a healing, when you see the healings in the gospel, the person always asks. The passage you mentioned about the blind man shouting, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Then the blind man comes closer and he says, what do you want? Man, what a stupid question, right? If you think about it, what does he want, man? He wants to see. But you always have to use your brain.
Yeah, what Jesus wants is a
statement from him. He needs to agree with him. I mean, showing the free will that we always have. I mean, you give your yes, then God acts. I mean, it's the same thing as touching the cloak. It's the same thing. You know, it's your yes. I mean, I touched it. And the healing of the blind man, the healing of the paralytic, that was spectacular, right? That one, you told me about it yourself. They put the men who carried the stretcher
inside the house.
Now look closely, see. This is another gospel passage that I used to question at first. Yeah, because if the stretcher bearer says, the stretcher bearer, Jesus' friends, right? We have to look at our friends to bring them to Jesus, right? Suddenly the stretcher bearer goes there and the paralytic is lying there. Then Jesus says, well, get up, pick up your mat and go. Have you ever thought about that? A guy who spent his whole life in a wheelchair, Jesus says, get up, pick up your wheelchair and take it home. You wouldn't see me. The last thing I would want to take with me is the wheelchair. Because as a reminder, so you always remember the good.
What do you think it was then? Why?
Jesus is not paradoxical at all. He has situations where you still live with it, even though you are healed. For example, depression. Depression is a disease. And you have stigma. Sometimes it can be genetic, it can be whatever. You may be cured, but you always have to be alert because it can take over you. It's the same story as the wheelchair Jesus carries. And he tells this guy to go back home with the stretcher. So he remembers that the stretcher can take over him. So he always has to stay in faith, always alert.
I also think there was a practical issue there, which was Jesus saying, look, this house is too crowded. We need to get these things out of here. No,
but he also speaks afterwards. It's beyond the mark over there. He speaks to the paralyzed too, not the same story. Take your mat and stretcher and go away.
Get up and walk. I brought the Bible here. I set aside a few things here to bring. Another miracle caught my attention. Not that they all don't, but I chose the one about the demon-possessed man, which starts here in Mark.
Which is the one with the pigs.
That's right. Man possessed by an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him, not even with chains or shackles. He had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he broke the chains and no one could subdue him. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell at his feet. He shouted in a loud voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you by God, do not torment me." And Jesus said, "Unclean spirit, come out of this man." And then the man even says a name, which is curious, right? The devil calls himself Legion, this demon, which perhaps refers to the Roman legion itself, which was also considered a demon by the Jews at that time. But then the question here is,
Is he a legion of demons?
That's right. And the unclean spirits begged Jesus, saying, "Send us into the pigs so we may enter them." He allowed it. And the unclean spirits, having come out, entered the pigs. How do you understand this event, sir?
You know, I really don't understand that. I actually need to look for an explanation. Why pigs, right? Because pigs are something,
Was seen as impure, right?
it was impure, so it was considered impure. And then Jesus was sent away from the city there because all the pigs fell into the water, right? That's it. They all died, right? Now, I don't know. Now, just look at this. This gospel, it shows that Jesus really was God, right? Because the demon himself recognized the presence of God. He said, "Hey, what are you doing here? Let us be in peace," right? Now, when he sent them into the pigs, maybe that's why, right? Maybe because pigs were unclean animals for the Jews, right? They don't eat pork, nothing from pigs. I think the spirit just goes all at once from one unclean side to the other.
You talked a lot about depression, anxiety, guilt. Could the demon possessed person also be someone who is depressed, anxious, and guilty?
Yes, they can, but the demon possessed person actually in that case was someone who really had strange behavior.
Today, would a situation like that have a cure, or is that a miraculous event?
No, that rarely happens, right? Possession is rare. I mentioned Father Lara, right? Being an exorcist is rare. Many times there are psychiatric disorders that people think are demonic possession, but they're not, right? They're not. The person really needs treatment.
But do you really think that demonic possession actually exists?
It's rare, but it does exist.
Have you never seen it?
No. I hope I don't see it.
I think no, not just think, I'm sure. The most complex, most remarkable miracle of Jesus is perhaps the resurrection of Lazarus.
Yes. It was impressive, right? You see that Lazarus had already been there for 3, 4 days and he was already smelling bad, right?
That's right. And then when it says that he was even, smelling bad,
Bad smell.
the body was already decaying after 4 days.
And he gets up and leaves. Yeah. Are you going to explain? How do you explain that? You can't. There's no way, right? You either believe or you don't.
Look, sir, you already smell bad. It's been 4 days.
Do you think the guy was in catalepsy like they say? Some people say, no, he died. He was in catalepsy. That's what happened. It's just that there are some phenomena that sometimes science comes up with situations that are impossible to happen. So if you were smelling bad, how could that be? A body in catalepsy, you stay there for 4 days with your heart stopped and still working? That's not possible.
And what does Jesus say? Look, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? Exactly. Here, the medicine is to believe, to believe.
It's faith.
The cure is in believing. It's faith. Is that your understanding?
Exactly. That's what I think. And you have to have faith. In that medicine, in the doctor who treats you, you have to believe that God is always behind it. That's it. Then things happen. Now, look, that doesn't mean everyone is going to be cured. Yes, they will. Because if not, look, only Jesus overcame death. Death is unavoidable. You must live each day. So some people can do it, some people can't. But no matter how religious or faithful a person is, there are situations they don't understand. God's plan is a mystery to us. Didn't Saint Therese die at 24 years old? Who was the holiest person who ever lived? So many people of faith have nothing to do with illness. Illness is not from God. It's from humanity, ours. The other day I saw a lady at my office. I went up to her and said, look, you need to give me 5 points of faith. And the woman got upset. It's always the doctor's fault, isn't it? Upset? Why did God do this to me? I said, I don't know, ma'am. God didn't do anything to you. You have diabetes and you don't take care of yourself. You're overweight and you don't exercise. You have high cholesterol and you don't take your medication. Are you saying God is to blame for that? So in that case, no, God makes use of the illness to give you a situation so you can grow in faith. God didn't create illness for anyone. There are several passages in the Bible that show this, right? That God doesn't send illness to anyone, right? The God of the new gospel, right, of the New Testament, the gospel of the New Testament, is not that punitive God who was in the Old Testament. He's a God of love. God is love, isn't he? Jesus took it upon himself.
You say that we have to heal the sick person and not the disease? Yes. What do you mean by that?
Because look, today's medicine is very fragmented. Super specialization has made people, colleagues, doctors treat the sick organ, the disease. And sometimes you have to treat the patient in a holistic way. Because look, how do I treat an older person who has a heart disease, but they also have diabetes? And there's also the emotional side that we have to get involved with. So you have to treat the body, soul, and spirit. It's clear that the treatment of the side, you usually say body,
Mind and spirit?
right? Yes. You need to be very careful with the spiritual side. As I mentioned in another segment, there is a very thin line between what is ethical and what is not ethical. So you need to be very careful. If the patient brings up the spiritual side, including religiosity and religion, that's fine. You just continue. That's great when it happens. For me, I think it's fantastic when I ask, would you like to talk about your religion, whatever it may be? If the patient starts talking, I think it's wonderful, because then you start to get into it, talk about the Bible, talk about Bible passages, talk about everything. I think it's great. But if the person doesn't bring it up, you can't.
Do you have patients from other religions?
I have many, look, evangelical patients, quite a few, many. I just told you now.
Evangelical shouldn't be considered another religion.
Exactly. It's another denomination. But I told you about the pastor who came in and said, shall we pray? Great, let's do it.
You know, there's something interesting. This house here, the studio, when we brought the furniture here, brought things here, it was a group of evangelical pastors, evangelicals who brought them here. And then they blessed our studio here, and in the end, they said a prayer here.
That's good, right? That's good.
I get really upset when people fight because of faith.
I think so too. Wow. I think it's wonderful. And then at the beginning of my conversion, we had that whole thing about how spirits are strong. We were on fire with that passion and everything. You started seeing patients, and I didn't know. Suddenly, the patient was evangelical and started talking to me about the Bible. You know, it was a good time when I learned a lot. We learn a lot from evangelicals because they have more biblical knowledge than we Catholics do. Now, Catholics are carrying the Bible around, right?
There's a revival happening in the Catholic world, right? In the Catholic religion.
Exactly.
There's a significant resurgence, actually, even detected in research.
Yes, yes, Catholic.
Is there anything you would like to have if I let you? For the next generations, what message would you like to leave?
That we can't neglect our spiritual dimension, regardless of the religion you practice or not. That gives you a purpose in life. Look, the current generation, Generation Z, only lives in the present. You have to imagine everything first. That you will have a life afterwards. It's important that you prepare for that. That's why it's important to care for your spiritual life, no matter your religion, however you want to believe, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But your dimension, your encounter with the divine is extremely important. The search, the purpose of life, it's always about you finding the divine. Here, even better, right? Because here, if you find it here, you'll find it later.
And by taking care of the spirit, we're also taking care of the liver, the spleen, the heart, the lungs, everything. Today,
because look, human beings have 3 dimensions, but it's just one thing, okay? You have body, soul, and spirit, body, mind, and spirit. But it's just one thing. One thing is connected to the other. You have spiritual problems. You have mental problems. Mental illness today is a serious problem, right? anxiety, depression, and everything else, that interferes, right? Just look at that. Depression is a risk factor for heart attack, for stroke. Today, it's considered a risk factor. So anxiety and depression are psychosocial risk factors. There is, in fact, a direct relationship with cardiovascular disease.
And does skepticism also affect the heart?
I don't know what to say, but skepticism, I'm a skeptical guy, you know.
No, sir, you're not skeptical, no.
I'm skeptical. I always think when something comes to me, I already think about the probability of it not being correct or not. Thank you. But that's because it's part of medicine, right? You know, this medical way of thinking is like that.
You first reject it and then decide whether to accept it or not.
It's difficult.
And have you faced resistance from the medical community? You mentioned some cases, but no, not anymore, not anymore.
No, because now they accept me as I am. And there are a lot of people who were hiding, you know, they came out of the closet. Really?
What do they call you, God's doctor?
I don't call myself anything. No. I keep to myself, you know. No, I think that testimony is what draws people in. Saint Teresa of Avila says that, right? Because your testimony, your behavior is what will lead people. It's not what I say, it's not what I do. It's not what I say, it's not what I do. That's it. I think that's what we see around us in the lives of the saints, right? For example, Father Leo, I accompanied Father Leo from the first day to the last day. I saw him every day. And when he asked me, what do I have? I said, you have cancer. He said, how long do you think I have to live? Look, half die in 3 months. He looked at me and said, it doesn't matter. I want to make the most of every minute of my cancer because from this, a priest will come out of it. That's it. I thought to myself,
So were you thinking about His Holiness?
no, a holy priest. I mean, regardless of being a saint, you know, a canonized saint, Holy Father, resurrected Father, he is resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagined, I said, what he's going to go through, he doesn't know. Can you believe he never complained? Never.
And how long did he live?
Just 10 months. He suffered with my colleague. Poor guy. Wow, he went blind. He couldn't hear, he couldn't walk, he couldn't do anything. Imagine that whole man.
Because sometimes nothing can cure it, right? There's no cure. There comes a moment when you say not even faith or medicine can heal.
It's not that you don't. You reach a point, right? You do. No one has conquered death, only Jesus. That's it.
I was about to call you Father, but instead, Dr. Roque Savioli, thank you very much.
No, not Father, no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you.
It was a great pleasure for me as well. Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
For your compassion. And also,
And your heart, your gut, your veins, your lung, and your brain.
thank you very much for coming to receive.
Thank you.